The May 11, 1970 tornado killed 26 people and injured more than 1,000 others in Lubbock. Two tornadoes formed that night. The more significant spiral touched near 19th Street and University Avenue around 9:30 p.m. For 30 minutes, it tore through northeast Lubbock, finally lifting near the airport. In its 8.5-mile path, the tornado created over an estimated $200 million in damages, according to city archives. Recovery efforts and funds from the government were robust, but the city was forever changed. 50 years later, people from the hardest-hit residential neighborhoods say the tragedy transformed their barrio, but not the people.
It hit the city of Lubbock, but not like it did the barrio Guadalupe.
Hundreds of homes were leveled in the Guadalupe neighborhood, a historically Hispanic area of town. After the tornado, displaced residents temporarily stayed in the Lubbock Coliseum. They were moved to other subdivisions, mostly in North and East Lubbock, according to Lubbock Avalanche Journal archives. Lala Chavez was 12 in 1970. Her early childhood was spent in Lubbock. She remembers eating snow cones out of bowls and learning to ride her bike in the Guadalupe area. But her family lived in California when the tornado hit. They visited Lubbock often and still had a house on North Avenue Inn that relatives lived in. They got calls about what happened.
I remember Dad and my mom getting us up and getting us ready, and we left that same night. We drove all night long and got there in the morning, and all that was left of my childhood home was the foundation.
Chavez may not have been there for the actual event, but she vividly recalls the aftermath.
I remember all the electrical lights on North Avenue and throughout the neighborhood. Wires were dancing on the street. The electrical, you could see the sparks. We went in the Coliseum. All I could hear was the crying of people, and I couldn't stand it. I started crying. I told my dad I couldn't stay there.
Her family was affected. Her aunt and uncle's family that lived in her childhood home made it to the basement and survived. Another uncle had a closer call.
And my uncle, who has also lived there in the neighborhood, he was out driving around that night, coming home back to his family. The tornado picked him up, dropped him off at McKenzie Park. But that's all that happened to him. No scratches, no nothing.
Chavez says her family hoped to return to their Lubbock home, but then it was gone, along with family heirlooms that were in storage. Her father's World War II memorabilia, her Native American grandmother's artifacts, all lost. District 1 City Councilman Juan Chavez was also not in Lubbock that night 50 years ago, but family members were. His grandparents' house was blown away. They survived by hiding in a central closet, the only part of the house that remained. His grandfather, pounded by large hail, was one of the injured.
He really looked like he'd been in a war zone. He was all beat up, black and purple, bruised up really bad. He would try to cover himself up with sheetrock, but that the hailstones were so huge, it was breaking the sheetrock.
Chavez and Chavez both say that rebuilding after the tornado was a hard and long process that improved the community. Before the tornado, the Guadalupe neighborhood was impoverished and often troubled. Now, the two community leaders say it's a respectable family neighborhood.
We're blessed. It's a vital, strong neighborhood. We all take care of each other.
Still, scars remain. Christy Martinez Garcia, the publisher of Latino Lubbock, who for years has worked to document these stories, says that 50 years later, debris from the tornado remains in a neighborhood park. A light pole that was broken in half is still there. She's heard countless stories of survival and heartache, but the historian says there's a common theme.
When push comes to shove, we will gather. There's just something about family, faith, and community when it comes to Hispanics. In that order, family, faith, and community.
Some never came back to the barrio, but others did and have stayed for generations. The Chavez family returned years later. Chavez's dad built a new home in the neighborhood, and she returned too. Her children now plan to build on nearby property. Chavez now represents her district on the Lubbock ISD school board.
That was home, and I'm back at home now.
When Chavez moved back to Lubbock about 10 years ago, he bought Guadalupe land that has been his family since 1918.
The kids, the grandkids, the great-grandkids, they keep coming back. There's something magical about this neighborhood. That's what I call it.
For Texas Tech Public Media, I'm Sarah Self-Walbrick.